Labour leadership contender Liz Kendall has dismissed calls for her to pull out of the contest and back another candidate to defeat Jeremy Corbyn. It follows a YouGov poll for The Times putting left-winger Mr Corbyn ahead in the race and Ms Kendall fourth. But she said, "I'll be fighting for what I believe in until the very end." Ex-Minister Alan Milburn followed Tony Blair in warning against a victory for Mr Corbyn, while ex-Deputy PM Lord Prescott told the party to calm down. Mr Milburn told the BBC the party would only win the next election if it occupied the centre ground. He added, "The alternative is that Labour lurches to the left. If it does that, frankly, it has a death wish. Don't leave it to the boys." Norman Smith, BBC assistant political editor, said pressure had been mounting on Ms Kendall to withdraw from the race. But the Leicester West MP rejected that idea in a BBC interview, after her aides had accused Andy Burnham's and Yvette Cooper's camps of fueling the idea. One source said, "Both Andy and Yvette have seen their numbers fall this week following the flip-flop over welfare, and that's what is making these campaigns try and make Liz somehow the problem to distract from their own issues." The source said that under the preference voting system it would not make any difference, even if Ms Kendall pulled out. Ms Kendall said she had always been an outsider in the race but said there were 51 days left to get people's support. She said a victory for Mr Corbyn would be a disaster, saying that turning back to the politics of the 1980s and losing elections does nothing to help the people the party wants to help. Ms Kendall added that she was the only candidate offering an alternative to the politics which lost the party the last two elections, saying her policies would help Labour win power so we can change the country for the better. Earlier, speaking to BBC Radio 4's Today programme, Ms Cooper said Ms Kendall should certainly not withdraw from the contest and leave it to the boys, just because of one poll. The Labour leadership race has been the subject of widespread debate after a YouGov poll this week suggested that in the final round of voting Mr Corbyn could finish 6 points ahead of bookmakers' favourite Mr Burnham. The poll suggested Mr Corbyn could receive 43% of first preference votes, ahead of Mr Burnham on 26%, Ms Cooper on 20% and Ms Kendall on 11%. Taking second preferences into account, the poll, of 1,054 people eligible to vote in the contest and carried out between Friday and Tuesday, pointed to a 6% victory for Mr Corbyn. Labour MP Frank Field, one of the MPs who lent Mr Corbyn his nomination, said the debate hasn't been widened by his candidacy, and the other candidates needed to up their game to defeat him. "I hope that in this whole process at least one of the candidates who say they oppose Jeremy has actually got both the physical courage and the intellectual clout to start that debate. If not, goodness knows what position we will be in after the votes are counted," he told BBC Radio 4's World at 1. A terrible legacy. Speaking to The Times, Lord Mandelson warned the Labour Party's existence as an electoral force was at stake. "Those of us who stayed and fought to save the Labour Party in the 1980s will be experiencing a growing sense of déjà vu," he told The Times. "The last 5 years have left us with a terrible legacy to overcome, with the existence of the Labour Party as an effective electoral force now at stake." On Tuesday, former Prime Minister Mr Blair warned Labour would not win again from a traditional leftist platform. And former advisor to Mr Blair, John McTernan, told BBC Newsnight 2 of the candidates should withdraw in favour of an anyone but Corbyn candidate. Former Deputy Leader Lord Prescott told BBC Radio 4's Today programme Mr Blair had been wrong to abuse supporters of Mr Corbyn with his transplant comment. He also said acting leader Harriet Harman had overstepped her authority in setting out Labour's support for some of the government's welfare cuts. Lord Prescott, Mr Blair's deputy PM for 10 years, added, "Who the hell is John McTernan?" He said it would not be a disaster if Jeremy Corbyn won, but said he would not be voting for him, adding, "It's the party's decision, not the MP's." Labour is due to announce its new leader at a special conference on September 12.